good morning, or good afternoon, or maybe it's evening. It doesn't really matter what time it is, and it doesn't even matter where you are. We want to welcome you to Wholeness Wednesdays. So grab a cup of coffee or tea and join our host, Beatrice Hutchison, as we explore and experience our journey to complete wholeness.
Hello, greetings, and welcome to another episode of Completely Whole's Wholeness Wednesdays, where we explore how to live fully and authentically, aligning your physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and financial well being. I'm your host, Beatrice Hutchison, and today we will be tackling a topic that holds so many of us back: overcoming fear and self doubt. If you've ever struggled with imposter syndrome or felt paralyzed by fear, this episode is for you. Let's break through those barriers together and make this year our breakthrough year. Doesn't that sound good? All right, let's dive in. So, first, we'll be talking about how to recognize fear and self doubt. Let's start by identifying what fear and self doubt looks like. These feelings often show up in a variety of ways. And so it could come or present itself as that little voice in your head that says, you're not good enough, or you're going to fail, you won't succeed. And so it could present itself in having that little, still small voice in the back of your head that says negative things. It also could present as hesitation to take action because you're afraid of making a mistake or being judged about what you do. Another way it can present is by feeling like a fraud, despite of your achievements, commonly known as imposter syndrome. So despite of what you've been able to accomplish, you still feel like a fraud. Fear and self-doubt are normal emotions, but become barriers when they stop you from pursuing your goals. So now the good news is that they're not permanent, right? If you work to remove them, because you can, right? So you have to work through them. And so that's what we want to talk about today. So the first thing we need to do is identify, we need to understand what the root causes are. So fear and self-doubt often stem from past experiences, societal pressures, or limiting beliefs. Maybe you faced some criticism in the past, or you've internalized the idea that you're not enough, whether you were told it or whatever has caused you to think that you're not enough. Recognizing the source of these feelings is the first step to overcoming them. So ask yourself, where is the fear coming from? Is this belief rooted in fact? Or is it a story that I've been telling myself, or maybe someone else, a story that someone else told me? Another question to ask yourself is, how is this fear serving me? Right? Is it helping me? Is it hindering me? Sometimes fear comes because it tries to protect us, but it can also keep us stuck and keep us paralyzed. And we never get a chance to really move past it to pursue our goals. So, now the next thing I'd like to talk to you about are tools for overcoming fear and self doubt. And so now that we've identified what the problem is, right? We talked about identifying what the underlying issue is. Now let's focus on some solutions. So here's some practical tools that could help you to overcome fear and self-doubt. So number one, we want to get a good understanding about who we are, right? So you need to get a good understanding about who you are and who you really are, who you were created to be. And so if you can get an understanding about who you really are, there would be no room for fear or self-doubt or even for an imposter syndrome. Psalms 139 verse 14 says that you are fearfully and wonderfully made. So that means that you were uniquely designed and purposely made. So that means that when God created you, He created you intentionally on purpose to fulfill a particular destiny or assignment or for a purpose. And so when you were created already designed uniquely, right? And so if you understand who you are, then you can't be in competition with anyone else, because then you realize that there is only one you, that no one is like you, right? And so then you can unapologetically show up and be you. And so Jeremiah 1 and verse 5 says, "Before I formed you in the belly, I knew you and sanctified you and ordained you," right? And so I really just kind of paraphrase that. But I want you to get the point. So the scripture talks about Jeremiah, the prophet Jeremiah, about how he was formed before he was even formed in the belly, that God knew him. And so I'm sharing that because that also applies to us. And that before we were yet in our mother's womb, right? Before we were even formed in the belly, God knew us. He created us in him even before the world began. So when he created us intentionally, purposely, uniquely, for a particular design, for a particular purpose in the earth, right? So each of us are uniquely and beautifully and wonderfully made, and God knew us even before the world was formed. He created us. And so it's important for us to understand that, because when you understand that, then you understand that you are unique, that you are one of a kind. And when you get a really good understanding of that, then there's no reason to have fear, because then you understand that you have everything that you need. Now, is there room for growth? Can you be strengthened in the things and be given some additional tools? Absolutely. But then you'll understand that you were purposely made, you were dispatched to the earth to fulfill a purpose. So you have someone's solution, you have someone's answer. And so when you understand that, then the doubt, the self doubt, and the fear and the imposter syndrome doesn't really have a place to really have a foothold or to really become a stronghold in your life. So it's important to understand who you really are. And we'll talk about that as we get a little further into some other episodes, but we'll talk about that. And so something else we need to make sure we do is we need to challenge those negative thoughts. So when self-doubt creeps in, right, because you get those thoughts, you need to ask yourself, is this thought true, right? First and foremost, is it true? And then, whether it is or it isn't, replace it with a positive affirmation, such as, I am capable and deserving of success. And so whatever it is that comes up in your mind, respond accordingly with a positive affirmation. Next, number 3 is that we want to take small steps. So fear often leaves us feeling overwhelmed because we're looking at the big picture, right? So if we break it down into small pieces, if we break the goal down into small pieces that are manageable steps, it helps us to focus on one step at a time and makes it seem more attainable. Next, number 4, we want to talk about is we want to build a support system. So it's important to surround ourselves with people who uplift and encourage you, right? That could speak life into you. Last episode, I talked about the power of our mouths, the words that we use, and our intentions, right? So you want to have people around you. Surround yourself with people that will speak life into you, that have positive things to say, that when you speak to them, something they says always encourages you, right? Always leaves you feeling inspired and uplifted and encouraged. Those are the kind of people that you need to have around you, not people that are gonna, spew out doubt and their own fears, right? And displace their own feelings onto you. You want to surround yourself with people that could really encourage you and keep you uplifted. And then you also want to share your goals. You want to be able to have someone that you could share your goals with, someone that you can trust and that you could ask for their support, right? So preferably someone that has been where you want to go, right? You can ask them for support. How did you do it? How were you able to attain it? And even if it's something as simple as what we're talking about, these feelings of fear, maybe there's someone else that you can come into contact with, or someone that's even in your circle that has dealt with these feelings before. Maybe you want to confide in them and let them know, that what you're struggling with, so that they can help, one, pray you through it, but also let you know that they've been there, right? And that they came through it, and they could also help you, encourage you to also come through it. Next, number 5 is that we want to visualize the success. So we want to spend a few minutes each day imagining yourself achieving your goal. And you want to picture the details, right? You want to think about how it feels and how it looks and how it sounds. Visualization, it trains your brain to believe that it's possible, right? And so a few episodes ago, I talked about the vision board, right? Having the visual board because of how powerful visualization can be, right? So it trains the mind. It's almost as you look at it, you visualize, you rehearse it in your brain, and it gives you the same sensations in the brains, the same types of feelings or sparks, or sends those hormones as if you were actually in that thing and achieving that goal, right? It gives you that same feeling. So visualization is very, very powerful. So you want to make sure that you do that, because then it will help to train your brain so that you would understand, of course, okay, maybe it has not happened yet, but you begin to believe that those things are possible, right? And so remember, all things are possible. Number 6 is that we want to reframe the failure, right? So we want to, instead of looking at failure as a stop sign, we want to view it as a learning opportunity, right? And so I mentioned in a prior episode that challenges are opportunities for growth, right? I have a friend that says that, and it is so true. So it is a learning opportunity. And so if we could look at it that way, not as a failure, not as being defeated, but think of it from the perspective of, this is a learning opportunity. What can I learn from this to apply as I move forward, right? Because we want to make sure we move forward and not just stay there and stay stuck because we fear that we may fail again. And so failure is what leads us to success, right? We will make mistakes and we will trip up, but from each step or each thing, we should learn something and apply it to our walk and to our path and our process as we move forward, so that it will no longer be an issue, right? So the next time we come up on that thing, then we really already have learned what the issues are and how to resolve it, so then it's no longer an issue, right? So it's a learning opportunity, and we need to see it that way. Every mistake brings you closer to the success, and so it's important to really, really understand that. And so I want to talk for a few moments about overcoming imposter syndrome. We talked about self-doubt and fear, but we want to also talk about imposter syndrome. And so if you've ever thought, I don't belong here, or someone's going to find out that I'm not as good as they think I am, or I'm not as smart as they think I am, then you're not alone. Imposter syndrome affects even the most accomplished people, right? So what is imposter syndrome? It is a psychological condition that is characterized by persistent doubt concerning one's abilities or accomplishments, accompanied by fear of being exposed as a fraud, despite the evidence of one's ongoing success, right? And so no matter what you accomplish, there's always that feeling that someone is going to find out that I'm not really as smart as they think I am, or they're going to find out that I'm a fraud, that I don't really belong here, right? And so it's that feeling of fear that someone's going to find out and I'm going to fail, or the shoe is going to drop, right? So it's that feeling. So that's what the imposter syndrome is, and at any point in anyone's life, they can experience this. But I want you to understand that it is not something that you need to lay hold to. It is not something that you need to allow to hinder and to hold your life, because it is not accurate, right? So we're going to talk about some ways that we could overcome, or that one can overcome imposter syndrome. But I first want to just mention to you that understand that throughout our lives, there are weapons that are formed against us. And so Isaiah 54:17 says, no weapon formed against us shall prosper. And so I want you to understand that although it is a weapon, right, it does not have to succeed, and it does not have to prosper. And the only way that it does is if you allow it to. And so we talk about awareness, right? And we talk about practical steps to getting over whatever the issues are, because we don't want to have any brokenness in our lives, right? We're on this journey towards wholeness. And so with understanding that this is a weapon, we get the tools that we need to be able to fight the weapon, right? Or to come against it or to cancel it out so that we're no longer held by it. Because imposter syndrome could really hold you back. You can have some accomplishments, but you can only get to a certain point, right? Almost as if you're in a room with a glass ceiling. You can only get but so high. You can see further, but you're not able to really get there because of these self-limiting beliefs, right? Because that's what it really is. And so understanding that it is a weapon, right? And so there is a way to overcome the weapon. And so how can you combat it, right? And so that's what we want to talk about. So again, first and foremost, as I just mentioned, we want to have an understanding about who we are, right? Because then once we understand, and I keep saying that, and it goes so much deeper, right? But I want you to understand that it's not about who the next person is, right? Or what the next person has, but it's about you knowing who you are, who you were created, and who you were designed to be. And once you understand that, then you understand that you are in the right room, that you are as smart as they think you are, and that you can do the things that you set out to do, because then you understand that there are no limits, because you are not acting of your own accord, right? You do have help, you have a helper, and so even you have the capacity to be able to be stretched and to learn and to go beyond even where you are. So then once you understand who you are, imposter syndrome cannot hold you. Also, you want to acknowledge your achievements, right? Because you do have some achievements, you have had some accomplishments. And so sometimes when you have this imposter syndrome, those things are not so obvious, right? So you want to create a journal where you write down your accomplishments, however big or however small. And then when self-doubt hits, you want to read through it as a reminder of your capabilities. Why? Because if you've done it before, then you could certainly do it again and do it better. And so the next thing we want to do is we want to practice self-compassion. Have grace with yourself. Treat yourself with kindness, the same kindness that you would offer to a friend, right? So if a friend is down on themselves, overly critical of themselves, you would encourage them, right? And let them know that they are worthy and that they can do it and don't give up, right? We do so well with trying to encourage others. So we want to also offer ourselves the same support as we would give to someone else. And so you don't have to be perfect, right? Without flaw to be worthy, right? Or to be able to accomplish a thing, right? So you want to make sure that you give yourself some grace, right? Give yourself, practice some self-compassion. The next thing you want to do is speak to your fears. Share your feelings with someone you trust, right? So you want to speak your fears. Speak your fears, not speak to, but speak your fears, right? You want to share it with someone else, right? Someone else that you trust. Say it out loud, because when you say it out loud, it often diminishes its power. Have you ever said something out loud and you're like, "Oh wow, that sounds silly," right? So that's the premise behind this. What I just mentioned. And so, but the next part is that, so we speak out our fears, but we also now want to speak to our fears. And so anytime a fear comes up, and so fear, we often say the acronym false evidence appearing real, right? So it's something that usually has no basis in truth, right? It has no, it really is this false appearance. It really is this thing that you have built in your mind that makes you think that it looks this way and it's that way and it's going to turn out this way, it's going to turn out that way. So you have all these things, this whole narrative built up in your mind, right? And so that's why you fear the thing. But oftentimes it's not really true, right? And so even if there is an instance where there may be some facts to it, the truth is that you will overcome, right? Because as I mentioned before, no weapon formed against you shall prosper, and that even every tongue that shall rise up against you, you shall utterly condemn, because that is the heritage of the saints. So you do not have to be bound by those fears, but you can overcome them. So when you have something that comes up and you become a little fearful, it's normal to feel a little fearful, right? Because sometimes you think, okay, I'm not strong enough for this. I don't know what to do in this moment. But you can lean and rely and trust in God to be able to help you to say what you need to say, right? To do what you need to do. In the moment, as well as being prepared, if you know beforehand, about whatever it is that you have to, whatever task you have to take on. But when that fear comes up, you want to speak to it out loud, and let it know that it's not going to work, or I can do it. I am deserving of success. I can be profitable. I can overcome this. I am more than a conqueror. I can overcome. I am an overcomer, right? I can have a successful life. I can live abundantly, right? So you want to be able, whatever that fear is, you want to be able to speak to it. We talked about the power of the words that we speak and the intentions. This is where this really goes into play. Fears will come up, but it's about what you do with that fear. Are you going to take it on, allow it to paralyze you and hinder you, or are you going to turn and speak to it and walk past it and move over it, right? So that's what we want to really make sure that we do. And so now the next thing I want to talk about is stepping boldly into new opportunities. So now that we've talked about some practical steps of what we can do to overcome self-doubt and fear, as well as imposter syndrome. And so one thing we want to understand is that overcoming fear and self-doubt isn't just about eliminating the negative, right? So it's about stepping into the positive with courage, right? Because it's not about just being here, speaking to something or getting over something and standing still, right? But it's about movement, because we want to continue on the process. So it's not just about eliminating the negative and staying where we are, but it's about stepping forward and onward into the positive with courage, right? And so I want to just mention a few tips on how we can do that. All right, because we're talking about stepping forward. We're still on this journey to wholeness, right? So the first thing we want to do is set bold goals. Don't let fear shrink your vision. Because you think you can't do something, you're going to minimize the goal that you would have set and make it really, really small because you think that you can't attain it. So please make sure that you don't allow it to shrink your vision, right? Still dream big. Still trust that you have what it takes to make it happen. So don't allow fear to grip you and to hinder whatever it is that you're trying to do. And so often, the next one is take action. And so often, because fear and self-doubt and imposter syndrome, those things, they work together to really bind us and to keep us from moving forward, or to have us procrastinate, right, and not move forward and do things, or to be slowful with doing things, right, or being indecisive. And so the antidote really to those things is to take action, right? So to just do it, just get it done. And so even small steps, whatever small steps you can take towards making it happen, overcoming that fear and stepping out and doing whatever the thing is, whatever the small step is, can help you to create momentum. And so each step you take creates more and more momentum, and before you know it, you are well on your way to success. The next thing we want to do is make sure that you celebrate your progress. Every step forward is a victory, right? Because you're not standing still, you're moving forward. And so every step that you take forward is a victory, and it should be celebrated. So acknowledge your growth along the way. Even when you make mistakes, celebrate it, because now, once you get to that place again, guess what? Now it's a victory, because now you've learned how to overcome it and how to move past it. And so that's another victory. And so you want to make sure that you acknowledge all the growth that you experience along the way, and it will help you to maintain that momentum and to keep moving. So remember, fear and self-doubt don't have to define your story. By understanding their roots, as we talked about in the beginning, understand what the underlying causes are and challenge their validity, right? Whether they're true, if they're rooted in fact or not, right? And then we want to take intentional action, practical steps. that could help us to step boldly into our breakthrough year. Because this year, we want this year to be like no other year. We've been talking about having a victorious and a successful life, and we want to have a life filled with wholeness. And we've been talking about having that happen this year, right? All the promises and all the things that have been held up, all the goals that we've had that we've not seen come to pass yet, all of those things we want to see happen in this year, right? 2025, we're still at the beginning, and we have great expectations for the whole year. But I want you to understand and to remember, we are counting this as our breakthrough year. Everything that has held us bound, everything that has held us captive. And that's why we're talking about this today, because these are some things that could make us remain stagnant, right? And that could prevent us from moving forward and having the success and the wonderful outcomes that we are expecting this year. So this year is our breakthrough year. It's the time to break through those glass ceilings. It's the time to break out of your shell, right? It's the time to break out of your comfort zone. It's the time for you to break out of the place, out of the mindsets, out of the things that have held you bound and that have held you captive, because you are capable and worthy and deserving of every opportunity that comes your way, and not just deserving of having the opportunity present itself, but of being successful in that opportunity. You are deserving of having every outcome that you're expecting come to pass, right? And you're capable to do what's needed, because remember, you were uniquely made and designed, right, for your process and for your journey and for what you are to bring or to contribute to the world. And so I want you to understand that you deserve everything that is coming your way, and not just that it comes your way, but you deserve to be able to grab hold of it and to be able to reap the benefits of it and be successful. And so that is our goal, and we really, really would like for you to take what we've talked about today and to really, really put those steps in place, right? It requires you to do some self work, right? It does. You would have to think about those things. And sometimes it can be a little painful when you go and you start thinking about some feelings that you've had and trying to search out where they've come from. But always remember, although you may go back through those memories and it may hurt for a moment, right? But it's worth going through it and dealing with it and understanding, because once you come through it and process it, really, it's really for the processing. Once you process it, you understand that although you went through that situation, it does not dictate who you are. Remember, I mentioned about who you really are and who God created you to be. So it's not who you are. It's not who you are. It's what you've experienced. It's what has happened to you. But it does not dictate who you are, right? And so you have been created to be someone that has an answer and that has a solution in the world to help others, to serve others, and to yourself be blessed and to receive all of the wonderful things that God has in store for you. And so I hope that's something you heard today really you can apply to your life, and my prayer is that you will be able to apply it and to be able to use it to succeed in life and to move you towards wholeness. And so thank you so much for joining on this episode of Wholeness Wednesdays. And so, as I mentioned, if you found anything interesting here, or that anything helpful that we talked about, please do share it with someone else. Subscribe, but share it with someone else that could benefit from what we've talked about, because we don't want to be gatekeepers of the information that we know. We want to also share it to others, and there's others that also need to be encouraged, right, and need to understand that they don't have to be held captive by anything, right? They were created to be and do more than what they even believe of themselves. And so thank you for joining this episode. I'd love to hear from you, please, if you've ever had any experience with any of the things we've talked about. If you've ever experienced fear or self-doubt, and you had a unique way of dealing with it, please do share it. Or if you just want to share your story, I would love to hear from you. You can definitely share any of the goals or any of the breakthroughs that you have. I would love to hear from you. And so you can connect with me on social media, or you could also email me at bhutch@completelywhole1.com. That's bhutch at completelyWhole1.com. And so again, I'm your host, Beatrice Hutcherson. And remember, your journey to wholeness starts here. And as we end, we always affirm together. So please do repeat after me. I decree that I no longer come into agreement with fear, self-doubt, or the imposter syndrome. I declare that right now, fear and doubt are broken off of my life forever, and I walk fearless into my breakthrough year. My prayer for each of you is that you will receive healing and complete wholeness in every area of your life. Let's make 2025 a year of fearless growth and transformation. And so until next time, take care of yourself, mind, body, and soul. Stay blessed and be made whole.
We thank you for sharing this time with us here at Wholeness Wednesdays. Thank you for joining us to explore and experience this journey to complete wholeness. Please remember that we are only an email away. Your questions and input are welcome via bhutch@completelyWhole1.com. See you next time here at Wholeness Wednesdays.